Welcome back to the Big Kahuna podcast. This is episode 3, and today we're taking a strategic look at culture and values. First, I'd like to thank those who have listened to the first couple episodes. One of the things that I'm enjoying most about this podcasting experience is what I'm learning. And each week we're trying to improve one element of the podcast and get it a little bit more perfected. Just coming up with a set. So today we're trying a little different set that we used in the previous episodes. Trying to deal with sound. I think today is going to be better than the first ones, and hopefully our next podcast sound would be even better. We're going to look at lighting. We're going to look at the cameras, the camera placements, that type of thing. And once we get the technical merits figured out, then we're probably going to put a lot more emphasis into the presentation, the quality of material that we discuss, our my presentation methods, etc. So come along on the journey as we're learning to podcast effectively. And I trust that the materials that we'll share and the topics that we discuss are going to be of interest to you, particularly if you own and operate or are responsible for the marketing of an organization. I'm trusting that what I share out of my 30 plus years of experience will be beneficial to you. So today we're going to take a strategic look at culture and values and where they play a role within the organization and how important they are in terms of our marketing activities. So in terms of what culture and values are, I would say that they essentially represent the shared experience or our history that now manifests itself in the moral standards and traditions and the perspectives we hold. What we believe shapes our culture, and our culture shapes our beliefs. People are drawn to our culture and values, or they're repelled by it. These are the building blocks of family, community, and even nationality. And even if we don't come from the same place or have experienced the same things, simply taking time to talk to each other about these things has the powerful effect of bringing us together. It reminds me of the old song by Walter Egan, Magnet and Steel. You are the magnet and I am the shy. No. I am the magnet and you are the shy. It draws us together. Here's where the power starts to come in. You see, our beliefs are often a highly personal affair, and sharing them creates a greater intimacy in our relationships. Understanding our differences also provides an opportunity for tolerance, appreciation, and patience. Right now, the world is focused on Israel and the Jewish-Palestinian conflict, and rightly so. You see, it's not hard to understand the feelings, beliefs, and history that separate the Israelis and the Palestinian peoples. But I think we have not thought enough about the feelings, beliefs, history, and even shared purpose that allows 2 million Arab Muslim citizens to coexist and build Israel together with the Jewish citizens. Just this week, I was talking with a consultant who I'm starting to do some business with. And it was our first conversation together, and so we're starting to get to know each other, get to know our businesses, kind of the business history, etc. But something I said caused him to say, well, where I'm from, this isn't the way it usually works. And I seized on that. I said, I asked him where is it that he comes from? What is his background? What's his family heritage? And he said he was Iranian, and he had come to Canada to study, and has made his home here, which is very common actually. In the Windsor area where I am, we have quite a lot of foreign students that come. They may already have experience in industry, but they come to do a 2-year master's program. And as a result, it puts them on the path to citizenship. So the education actually becomes part of their plan to become Canadian citizens. And we've had the good fortune of hiring quite a number of foreign students over the years that have worked here part-time during their school time, or we've brought them on full-time when their schooling was complete. And I shared with this fellow that we've had a number of Iranian folks that have been with the company. And the really great experience I've had working with them, brilliant people. And we talked about how the education in Iran is really geared towards engineering and medical and law, that type of thing, and how we've in Canada have been the beneficiaries of that training and that discipline that's been instilled. And what that conversation did was, up until that point, we were talking kind of on a businessy level, information, facts, that type of thing. But that short little conversation, talking about each other's background, really allowed us to cement on a different level, cement our relationship on a different level. As we shared our own experience, I shared how our family were immigrants to Canada as well, albeit our family came in 1805, and that caught his attention for sure. And he asked where we came from originally. I said, well, I've been able to trace back to the 1600s when the Schantz family was in Switzerland, albeit one of the most beautiful places in the world. I had an opportunity to see it with my wife and daughter a couple of years back, and it did make me wonder why they actually left. But I do know why they left. They left because of religious persecution at that time. The one group of Christians were tying up our group of Christians and tossing them into the lake. And I guess if that was happening to me, I would probably head out too. And so off to Holland and then to Pennsylvania. And then following the American Civil War, it made sense for a lot of them, the German Mennonite community in Pennsylvania, to start heading north to find new land. And so our clan jumped into some Conestoga wagons and 6-week journey north into Ontario. Civilization ended at Hamilton. Hamilton at that time was a giant swamp. Through the forests and the native Canadians that lived there, we found Kitchener-Waterloo and built our homes there. And the Schantz family's been in that area for 225 years. Sharing that history was also a way that really caught the fellow's attention. A lot of people don't know their history. They don't understand where they've come from. I talked to another girl this week, asked a little bit about her name and where that came from, and she had a little bit of an idea, but she really didn't know more than a generation back what her history was. I suppose if she sat down and really thought about it, she would. But that depth of understanding that history is so powerful. And sharing that story, it's so personal. And when you're sharing it with others and you're finding common ground, we were both immigrants at one point. We both had hardships that we had to work through. Now, obviously, I didn't. I've had the benefit of living here my entire life, and my father and grandfather, and so on and so forth. But there was still connection points. And it allowed us to start to understand where the other person was coming from. We've been talking about the human relationships, the interpersonal relationships, and how culture and values start to bring people together. But how does that work in terms of the corporate brand, corporate culture, corporate values? Well, it's very important. And it's essentially the same thing. Corporate culture and corporate values are so important when it comes to sales and marketing, uh, when it comes to hiring staff. You want to hire the right people. You want to evaluate your people against the culture and the value statements that are the foundations of your organization. People who don't fit that, that may be a reason for releasing them. And if we share the, those essential truths, then our experience in the workplace is much more cohesive and I would think much more productive. I know in our own experience at WebGeeks over the years, I've hired and worked with a lot of talented people. And I think for the most part, we've been very cohesive and sharing sharing a great work environment. And I think our customers have experienced that as well. And I know as people have moved on from the organization and we've had an opportunity to debrief a bit, most of the comments about their time and their experience with WebGeeks has been very positive, and I'm thankful for that. And I think a lot of it is because we've tried to have clear values, create a culture that was conducive to those values, and then hire people that we felt would be comfortable working within an environment, within a culture that was built on the values that we espouse. Now, culture is not only important when we're hiring team members, it's also important in our sales and marketing. It's how we attract clients to us. Our culture and values, they allow customers who share the same values to align themselves with us and with our organization. And the same is true for you. If the customers are aware of what you stand for, what you believe in, and if they share those same values, they are highly likely to want to do business with you. Not only do loyal customers champion your product and service, but your brand as well. Sharing value builds trust, and people are drawn to your story. They fall in love with people they know, like, and trust. The other thing that's interesting is values and culture that's clearly understood and communicated also can have the opposite effect, and that is in repelling the customers you don't want to do business with. Now, I know it's common for business owners to say, well, we can help everybody. But in reality, that's not really true. And there's a lot of people that or a lot of cases where if you're promoting to the right people, to the right target market, the people who are wanting to work with you and support your values, chances are they're going to be a much better customer for the company. They're likely to be much more profitable and probably cause a lot less problems and grief to have to deal with. On the other hand, there's clients that really you could do without, to be honest. They don't share your values. They make it hard for the team to work with them. And they're often more costly, and in many cases, it'd be better to have not worked with them and found a few more customers that are consistent with your culture and value system. The other thing that's interesting is we talked about the culture within the organization and how it attracts the right people to work with you, and then how by communicating those values in an effective way can help draw the right customers to you. But it also can impact your trading relationships with vendors. Having a good vendor relationship can make all the difference, and sharing values at that level certainly can impact that. What about your financial partners, your banks, the people you're working with, your trusted advisors? Again, being able to connect on a personal, emotional level makes those relationships that much more effective. And what about investment? If you're looking to finance the company and bring more money in through investment partners, isn't it true that investors are also driven by culture and values? Can we attract supportive investors who will want to support what we're all about? Absolutely. So, in terms of the organization, understanding, communicating culture is really, really important. So, now that we're bought into the importance and priority of understanding, communicating our values, to intentionally building a culture that's supportive of the type of business we want to be, how do we go about doing that? Well, that's the exercise, isn't it? But what's interesting is, as much as we know we have to sit down and formalize those statements, the reality is within the organization, assuming it's not a brand new startup, but if the organization's been in existence for some time, it's obvious that you already have values that have worked their way in, whether intentional or not. So it's not like you're starting from scratch. In reality, there's likely to be already some distinct culture within your organization. But these values need to be shared. So they are often formalized through a team effort. So as a small business owner, my personal values have greatly influenced the values of our organization. And if I don't believe the statements, then they're just not going to be a part of our value statements. But as the organization grows, there's other team members, other management folks, and we need to develop shared values. And so often the exercise of coming up with a value statement or a statement of beliefs is a shared exercise. Yes, the owner or the CEO is going to have a big voice in that. Absolutely. But because these values need to be embraced by the team, your management team, and then throughout the organization, it's very important to include important stakeholders into the process of developing these formalized statements. Can it be done in a weekend? Sure. Can it be done in a day? Sure. But here's what I have found. Obviously, it takes a little time to flesh these things out. So you may sit down and do a session together, and we've done that, and work these out and put them on paper. But before we've shared them with the entire team, we've just kind of mulled over them, thought about them, tested them out a little bit, and, massaged them and worked on them. So the exercise, although it could be done in a short period of time, I think in reality needs time to percolate. And so don't rush it. You don't have to achieve it before other things are done. I think it's important, though, that we remember values are belief statements, and they go to the core of our identity. Values are the ideas and the ideals we live by. They're the standards that we aspire to. And they're the moral hills on which we're willing to die. The other thing I was thinking about as I was considering value statements is they can be very aspirational, and what I mean by that is these are statements of what we know should be true, may be true to some degree in our organization, but maybe aren't fully true. What do I mean by that? Well, I often think about Thomas Jefferson, third president of the United States, but the fella who put together the Declaration of Independence. And what's really interesting about that document is the declarations in there are truths that were shared, but they weren't necessarily realities. There's the part there that Jefferson wrote that says that all men are created equal with inalienable rights given by God. All men are equal. Well, that was an interesting statement for Jefferson to write. Why? Because at the time, he was a slaveholder. And in that document, he was declaring that his slaves had equal value to him and to his colleagues and to his family. That was a pretty radical thought. That was an aspirational thought. Aspirational because Jefferson, although he was declaring the equality, he wasn't living that out. Now, it's interesting that at the end of his life, he did release his slaves, and that was wonderful. Now, I know looking back, it's tempting to say, well, if Jefferson believed this, why didn't he do it sooner? Yeah, why didn't he? But I think there's some realities of the time that we're living through, and at his time, although he was making a big goal, it was a very difficult thing to pull off. But he did. He aspired towards that, and over time, he was able to achieve that. Well, isn't that a lot like us? When we start off and we even thinking about our families, what we want our families to be, the kind of kids we want to raise, the type of relationship we want to have with our spouse, our extended family, the kind of the unity and the cohesion we want to develop. In many cases, as we think about those things, it is aspirational, isn't it? Because we have struggles, we have tensions, and sometimes we have some pretty big divides that we need to overcome. But if we declare those things, we set them out, if we write some value statements for our own family, those are things that we start working towards, aren't they? And there's the old adage that the folks that aim at nothing will hit it every time. Well, we're not going to realize anything unless we declare it, put it on paper, and make plans to work towards it. Allow our today to be changed, transformed tomorrow. The same thing within the organization. Where you want to be and where you are could be very different places. But if you set the right goals, you've hired the right people, you're communicating the message of what you stand for consistently, over time, the organization will become that. And it will change, and it will be better. And it will attract the kind of customers that we're wanting to do business with. So how do we foster the kind of culture we want? How do we make these belief statements become true, to be the values, to be that part of our DNA that is unchangeable? Well, we've talked about the fact that they need to be declared and written down, formalized. They need to be published. Where do they need to be published? I would publish them right on the wall of my lobby. I would put it where my customers can see it, my vendors can see it, my investors can see it, and most importantly, where my employees can see it. I would put it in the lunchroom. I would get it up that it's a constant reminder of who we want to be and what we expect of each other. Now, one of the challenges with that is when we see something all the time and it becomes so familiar, we eventually stop seeing it. So that's true. So we need to find other ways to reinforce it. Uh, we want to get it out on the company website. So having a section on the site that talks about our values. We want it to show up in our annual reports to our shareholders and trusted partners. But if these ideas and these values are going to truly be foundational to the organization's DNA, we're going to take it much farther than that. When it comes to hiring people for the company, do we hire strictly based on their technical expertise or their education? Yeah, those things are very important. But if we're saying culture is at the heart of things, then we need to try and get at what that new hire's values are. Are they something that's consistent? Is it something that they're willing to grow into? If they're not, maybe we ought not hire them, even if they are very technically a good fit for the company. But if they're not sharing the values and the things that are most important to the company, do they really need to be there? Maybe for their sake as well as ours, they should be somewhere else. And what about when we're evaluating the performance of our team? We're obviously looking at how they perform and are they hitting their targets and goals, but are they exemplifying the values of the organization? In our performance evaluations, we look at those value statements first, and we talk together on how the employee or the team member is measuring up in their embrace and manifestation of those values. So performance evaluations. And what about firing? If they're not measuring up, if they're not sharing the values, if they're rebelling against them, do we really want to keep them? Or is that a reason to release them and let them get into an organization that's maybe a better fit for who and what they believe? It should shape corporate policy. In my mind, if it doesn't become evident in the marketing messages, in our customer service, in the types of products and services that we develop and deliver, if it's not a part of how we select and handle our customers and provide customer service, if it needs to be part of, a great way of finding out if our culture is oozing out of the walls of the building and into the market is to ask the market, do some surveys, do some customer or investor surveys, or even our trading partners, and within that feedback, find out if our value system is evident to them. Are they identifying with it, or is there work that needs to be done? We need to not only write some values on the wall and play if there's anything I want to impress upon you in this conversation, is that these values need to become a part of who we really are and what we really do and how we really treat our people and our customers. From a marketer's perspective, I should not only know what these statements are, but I should be thinking about how to message in a way that's consistent with those values. When I'm making decisions about products and services or other business decisions, I should be considering them in relationship to those value statements. The more I allow the things I believe to be an active part of how I operate, how I talk, and how I think, the more real they're going to become, and the closer I'm going to get to the customers I want to work with, and the more likely I am to achieve the success I'm interested in achieving. I remember meeting a fellow some years ago, and his name eludes me right now, but he had an interesting book that he wrote. But the neat thing about him is he could often go into an organization, and his whole forte was cultural development in the organization. And he could ask a number of questions of the organization, and he could, in the most uncanny way, guess what the bottom line of the company was. He knew that culture shaped the business goals and the revenue expectations. When I think about our own experience, I guess I could get a little bit vulnerable here. Our values have upheld the value of people. And it's been one of the first priorities. We look for tangible ways to love our people, and how we treat our people is very important, and how we love and treat our customers is very important to us. I also have a value statement in there that talks about competitiveness and winning. And this is where values are interesting. For so many years, I have focused on the loving part of it. And to me, loving meant the words I choose, and being kind and being nice and fostering that within the organization. And I think we should. I think people really appreciate it. There's a lot of tough stuff going on in the world. And it's nice to be able to come to work that you enjoy being there and you enjoy doing. But I don't think I've put the emphasis on the competitiveness, excellence, and that type of thing in the same measure that I've done the other. And the problem I think I've had in my company is I've been so nice, and I've missed out on holding people accountable to good performance. And when you think about that, is if people are not excelling at the level that they should and could be, and I'm not doing anything to hold them accountable to that, to train them, to inspire them, am I actually being loving? Am I actually being nice? If the company is performing subpar and delivering inferior service to the customer, is that really holding up to my goals? Well, I think that when it comes to values and culture, it's important to be always looking at them, evaluating them, and finding out where we're falling short. We may be strong in one area, but we're entirely weak in another. And so I would really encourage you to take a serious look at your values. Think about where you are in realizing them in the organization, and then finding ways to improve them and make them real. It's going to serve the organization very well. And it's going to make your life so much richer as you develop deeper, more intimate relationships with the people you do business with and the people you do life with. In the last episode of the Big Kahuna podcast, we looked at the importance of understanding our purpose and why we get up and do what we do. And today we've looked at our values and the kind of culture we want to develop in the organization. So in my mind, I think we've laid a good framework for starting to look at things like vision and goal setting. So I hope you'll join us again for the Big Kahuna podcast, because in our next episode, we're going to take a look at vision and developing vision for the organization, maybe vision for our life as well. And I would really be delighted if you would join us, and if you would take the time to share with some others what you're getting out of the podcast. Share it with me. You can leave some comments and some feedback. And if there's some things that you would like to talk about, things that you would like me to share my perspective on, let me know that too, and help shape the direction of our podcast. So until next time, have a terrific week, and we'll see you in the next episode of the Big Kahuna podcast.